Where is my granddaughter? The billionaire's voice shook as he stared at the private investigator. For 18 years, he'd sent $10,000 every single month, over $2 million total, to make sure his granddaughter had everything she needed. But the photo in front of him showed a young woman sleeping on a shelter cot, washing dishes for her next meal, wearing clothes donated by strangers. His next question made the woman who raised her go pale. Where is every penny I sent? What he discovered next will make your blood boil. Stay with me, because this story will restore your faith in justice. Welcome to Penthouse Stories with Grandpa. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and share your thoughts on the story, as well as where you are watching from. Have you ever sent money to help someone you love, trusting that it would reach them, only to discover years later that they never received a single penny? Today, I want to share a story that will make you think twice about blind trust. This is about a wealthy grandfather, a stolen childhood, and a truth that changed everything. Let me tell you about Robert Hamilton. At 73 years old, Robert had built an impressive life. He owned a successful construction company in Los Angeles that had made him incredibly wealthy. We're talking about $3 billion. His buildings stood tall across the country, proof of decades of hard work. But on one particular morning in November, all that success meant nothing. Robert sat in his fancy office on the top floor, looking out at the city he'd helped build. Across from him sat a private investigator named James Carter. James had been doing this kind of work for almost 30 years, and the look on his face told Robert that something was terribly wrong. James pushed a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs that made Robert's hands start shaking. A young woman with beautiful dark skin and thick curly hair tied back simply. She wore old, worn-out clothes and stood in line at a soup kitchen. Another photo showed her sleeping on a small bed in a crowded room full of strangers. The last picture showed her washing dishes, her thin arms covered in soap bubbles. Robert stared at the young woman's face. Those eyes. That dimple when she smiled. It was like looking at a ghost from his past. This can't be real, Robert whispered, barely able to speak. Lily is supposed to be living comfortably with her Aunt Patricia. She's supposed to be getting ready for college. She's supposed to have everything she needs. James leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Mr. Hamilton, I've been doing this work for 27 years. I went to the address you gave me, the one where you've been sending money all these years. It's a beautiful mansion worth over $2 million. Patricia lives there with her 2 children, both in expensive private schools. But Lily. He paused, letting the weight settle. Lily has been living at Hope Haven Shelter on the east side for the past 3 months. Before that, she was in a rundown apartment building. The landlord remembers her. Said Patricia kept her isolated, barely let her outside. Then 3 months ago, Patricia just moved out and left the girl behind with nothing. Robert felt his chest tighten. For 18 years, he had sent money every single month. Not once had he missed a payment. Not once had he asked too many questions. He had trusted Patricia because she was family, his son-in-law's sister. She had come to him when his whole world was falling apart, and she had promised to take care of everything. The day Robert's daughter Jasmine died was the worst day of his life. Jasmine had been his only child, his pride and joy. She worked as a nurse and dreamed of opening her own health clinic. She had married David Carter, a good man who taught at the local high school and coached basketball. They were so happy together, so full of plans for the future. Then David died in a terrible car accident, hit by a drunk driver coming home from practice. Jasmine was 6 months pregnant at the time. The grief nearly destroyed her, but she held on for the baby growing inside her. She held on through those final 3 months, determined to bring her daughter into the world. But when the time came, complications during childbirth took Jasmine's life even as baby Lily took her first breath. Robert was in that hospital room, watching doctors fight to save his daughter while nurses rushed the crying newborn away. He had failed. Failed to protect Jasmine. Failed to keep her safe. In the days after Jasmine's funeral, Robert could barely function. He was 70 years old, had just buried his only child, and now there was a newborn baby who needed care. With his demanding work schedule and crushing grief, taking care of an infant seemed impossible. That's when Patricia appeared. She was David's older sister, someone Robert had only met twice before. She came to his home with kind words and what seemed like a perfect solution. She would raise Lily as her own, give the baby a stable home with her own 2 children who could be like siblings. Robert would provide financial support, of course, because that's what Jasmine would have wanted. Patricia made it all sound so reasonable, so right. Your son would have wanted this, Robert remembered telling her, his voice empty with grief. He loved Jasmine so much. This baby is all we have left of them both. Patricia had nodded seriously, taken his hand, and promised to love Lily like her own flesh and blood. Robert set everything up immediately through his lawyers. He would send $10,000 every month to an account set up in Lily's name, but managed by Patricia as the legal guardian. Over 18 years, that added up to more than $2 million. Money to make sure his granddaughter had everything: education, healthcare, clothes, opportunities, a future. He signed papers giving Patricia legal guardianship while keeping his financial responsibility and the right to visit. But Patricia suggested that visits might confuse the child, might make things harder. Let her settle into a routine, Patricia had said. Let her feel secure. We can arrange visits when she's older. Robert, drowning in his own pain, had agreed. He told himself he was doing the right thing. He told himself this was what Jasmine would have wanted. He told himself that money could fix what his absence couldn't. Now, staring at photos of his granddaughter sleeping in a homeless shelter, Robert understood just how badly he had failed. I need to see her right now, Robert said, standing up so quickly his chair rolled backward. His assistant tried to stop him at the door, reminding him about important meetings and phone calls, but Robert walked right past her. James followed close behind as they took the private elevator down to the parking garage where Robert's expensive car waited. The drive to the east side took 40 minutes through Los Angeles traffic. Robert watched the neighborhoods change outside his window. The shiny towers of downtown gave way to modest homes, then to areas that clearly needed more investment and care. Hope Haven Shelter was in a renovated church building with peeling paint and a faded sign advertising free meals and emergency housing. Robert had donated money to places like this over the years, written checks to ease his conscience. But he had never actually visited one, never truly seen what desperation looked like up close. He felt shame burning in his chest as he stepped out of his luxury car onto cracked pavement. Inside, the shelter was clean but worn. Metal beds lined the walls of what used to be the church's main room. Women of all ages moved about quietly, some caring for small children, others just staring at nothing. The smell of cleaning products mixed with cooking food from somewhere in the back. A woman in her 60s with gray hair and warm eyes approached them. Her name tag read Mrs. Okonkwo, director. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked with a slight Nigerian accent. Robert cleared his throat. "I'm looking for Lily Hamilton. I was told she's staying here." Mrs. Okonkwo's expression changed from professional courtesy to surprised recognition. She knew who Robert Hamilton was. Everyone in Los Angeles knew his face from business magazines and charity events. "May I ask what this is about?" she said carefully. "I'm her grandfather," Robert said, the words feeling strange after 18 years of absence. Mrs. Okonkwo studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She's in the kitchen working her shift." She led them through a narrow hallway to a large kitchen where several women prepared food for the evening meal. And there, at the sink with her hands in soapy water, stood his granddaughter. Lily was tall and slender with her mother's high cheekbones and graceful features. She wore jeans that were too short and a donated sweatshirt that had seen better days. Her natural hair was pulled back simply, and she wore no jewelry or makeup. But even in these circumstances, she carried herself with quiet dignity. She laughed at something another woman said, her face lighting up briefly before returning to the serious work of scrubbing a large pot. Robert's heart broke watching her. This girl should be preparing for college, going to dances, worrying about normal teenage things. Instead, she was washing dishes in a homeless shelter just to earn her next meal. "Lily," Mrs. Okonkwo called gently. "Could you come here for a moment, sweetheart?" Lily dried her hands on a towel and turned around. When she saw Robert and James standing there in their expensive suits, confusion crossed her face. She walked over carefully, the way someone approaches a situation they don't fully understand but know might change everything. "Yes, Lily said softly, her eyes moving between the three of them. Up close, Robert could see Jasmine even more clearly. The shape of her face, the way she held her head, the cautious intelligence in her eyes. His daughter lived on in this young woman, and he had abandoned her to strangers and cruelty. "Do you know who I am?" Robert asked, his voice cracking despite trying to stay composed. Lily studied his face carefully, then shook her head. "No, sir. Should I?" The words hit Robert like a punch to the gut. Should she know her own grandfather? Yes. Should she recognize the man who was supposed to protect her? Absolutely. Should she have grown up knowing she had family who loved her? Without question. "I'm Robert Hamilton," he said quietly. I'm your grandfather. Your mother was my daughter, Jasmine. Lily's expression went through several emotions quickly: confusion, disbelief, something that might have been hope, then a protective shuddering. That's not possible, she said, taking a small step back. Aunt Patricia told me my grandfather wanted nothing to do with me. She said you blamed me for my mother's death. She said you never wanted to see me. The room seemed to tilt. Robert reached out to steady himself against the doorframe. James moved closer, ready to catch him if needed. Mrs. Okonkwo brought a chair, but Robert waved it away. He needed to stay standing for this. That's a lie, Robert said, his voice gaining strength through pure anger at what had been done to this child. I have never blamed you for anything. I have sent money every single month since you were born. $10,000 every month for 18 years. Over $2 million total. Lily stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. I don't understand, she whispered. What money? I've never had any money. I don't even have a bank account. Robert pulled out the folder James had given him that morning. He opened it to show bank statements and transfer records, 18 years of documented payments. Every single month, $10,000 deposited into an account set up in Lily Hamilton's name. But the account manager, the person who could use those funds, was listed as Patricia Carter, legal guardian. Lily's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. Other women in the kitchen had stopped working, sensing something important was happening. Mrs. Okonkwo put a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. This says $2 million, Lily said, her voice barely audible. Where is it? Why am I here? Why do I have nothing? Robert felt tears he hadn't cried since Jasmine's funeral begin to well up. That's exactly what I'm going to find out, he promised. And whoever stole your future is going to pay for every single day you've suffered. The next few hours passed in a blur of emotion and difficult decisions. Robert insisted that Lily come with him immediately, but she hesitated. 18 years of Patricia's lies had taught her to trust no one, to expect nothing, to believe she deserved the scraps she received. Mrs. Okonkwo, bless her heart, sat down with Lily and spoke to her privately. Whatever she said helped, because Lily finally nodded and agreed to go with Robert. She gathered her few belongings from the shelter, a backpack containing 2 changes of clothes, a worn book about preparing for college, and a photo of a woman Lily had never met but somehow knew was her mother. Robert learned later that Patricia had given her that single photo when she threw her out. A cruel parting gift. As they drove toward his home, Lily sat quietly in the backseat, staring out the window at the city passing by. Robert tried to make conversation, to bridge the impossible gap of 18 lost years, but words felt inadequate. What could he say? I'm sorry didn't cover it. I didn't know rang hollow. He should have known. He should have checked. He should have insisted on seeing his granddaughter. Robert's home was a beautiful penthouse that took up the entire top floor of one of his own buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the ocean and the glittering city below. The space was filled with expensive art and custom furniture. Everything screamed wealth and taste. When Lily walked in, she seemed to shrink, as if afraid to touch anything or leave marks on the pristine floors. Robert's housekeeper, Elena, was a kind woman in her 50s who had worked for him for over 20 years. She took one look at Lily and immediately went into action. She didn't ask questions, just did what needed to be done. She showed Lily to a guest room that was larger than any place Lily had ever lived. She ran a bath with expensive soaps. She laid out soft towels and a comfortable robe. Meanwhile, Robert stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear, calling in every favor he had built up over 40 years in business. First call went to Anthony Rodriguez, the best financial investigator in Los Angeles. I need you to trace every penny of $2 million, Robert said without introduction. I need to know where it went, what it bought, and who benefited. And I need it as soon as possible. Second call went to his personal lawyer, David Chen. I need you to prepare criminal charges for theft, fraud, and anything else you can make stick. The target is Patricia Carter. I want her to feel the full weight of what she's done. The third call was the hardest. Robert dialed the number he had called monthly for 18 years, the emergency number Patricia had provided. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and fake. Robert, what a surprise. Is everything all right? I found Lily, Robert said, his voice cold enough to freeze water. There was a pause, just a fraction too long. What do you mean? Lily is right here. Stop lying, Robert said. I found her in a homeless shelter. I found her washing dishes for her next meal. I found her wearing donated clothes and sleeping on a bed meant for strangers. So I'm going to ask you one time, and you better think very carefully before you answer. Where is the $2 million I sent for my granddaughter? Another pause, longer this time. When Patricia spoke again, the fake warmth had drained from her voice. I don't know what she told you, but I provided for that girl. She had a roof over her head, food to eat. The money was used appropriately. Then you'll have no problem providing receipts, Robert said. Bank statements, bills, school records, medical expenses. I want documentation for every penny. My lawyer will be in touch. He hung up before she could respond. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He wandered his penthouse, checking on Lily every hour. She slept restlessly, even in the comfortable bed, as if her body couldn't quite believe it was real. Around 3 a.m, he found her sitting in the dark living room, staring out at the city lights. Can't sleep either? Robert asked gently, sitting in a chair across from her. Lily shook her head. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up back at the shelter. That this is some kind of dream or trick. It's real, Robert assured her. And I promise you, Lily, you're never going back there. You're never going to be hungry or cold or alone again. Lily was quiet for a long moment. She told me you hated me, she finally said. Aunt Patricia. She said my birth killed my mother, and you blamed me. She said you wanted nothing to do with our family after my dad died. She said the only reason she took me in was out of charity, even though I was a burden. Robert felt rage building in his chest, the kind that made him want to break things. None of that is true, he said firmly. Your mother died because of a medical complication. It wasn't your fault. It was nobody's fault. And I never, ever blamed you. You're all I have left of Jasmine. You're precious to me, even though I've done a terrible job of showing it. Lily looked at him with those eyes that were so much like her mother's. Why didn't you come see me? Not even once in 18 years. It was the question Robert had been asking himself since that morning. Because I was a coward, he admitted. Because I was drowning in grief, and I convinced myself that money was enough. That as long as I sent checks, I was doing my job. I let Patricia tell me that visits would confuse you, that you needed stability, that I should wait until you were older. And I believed her because it was easier than facing my own pain. But you sent money. Lily asked, still trying to understand. Every month. $10,000. I have the bank records to prove it. The account was in your name, but Patricia controlled it. She was supposed to use it for your care, your education, your future. Instead, she used it to build her own comfortable life. Over the next few days, Anthony Rodriguez worked his magic with financial records. What he uncovered was absolutely damning, a pattern of theft and deception that had lasted 18 years. Patricia had been depositing Robert's checks into the account in Lily's name, but then she'd been transferring the money to her personal accounts and spending it freely. The evidence was overwhelming. The house she lived in, a beautiful mansion purchased 5 years ago for $2.3 million, paid for entirely with funds from Lily's account. 2 luxury vehicles, also purchased with Lily's money. Private school tuition for Patricia's biological children, both attending prestigious academies at $40,000 per year each. Family vacations every summer, staying in 5-star hotels. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, regular spa treatments. Patricia had been living like a wealthy woman while Lily wore donated clothes and went hungry. But the cruelty went deeper than financial theft. James's investigation revealed that Patricia had deliberately isolated Lily. The homeschooling wasn't about providing quality education, it was about control. It kept Lily from making friends who might ask questions. It kept her away from teachers who might notice neglect. It kept her trapped in that small apartment with no knowledge of the outside world or her rights. Patricia had provided the bare minimum, enough food to keep Lily alive, a place to sleep, basic clothes. But there was no love, no encouragement, no investment in Lily's future. And when Lily turned 18, Patricia simply discarded her like trash. Told her to leave and figure out her own life. Gave her that single photo of Jasmine and nothing else. No birth certificate, no social security card, no money, no support system. Just abandonment. Robert learned that Lily had spent the first month after being thrown out sleeping in parks and public libraries. She had eventually found her way to Hope Haven, where Mrs. Okonkwo had recognized something special in the quiet, polite young woman who asked for nothing but was willing to work for everything. Lily had been studying for her high school equivalency exam at the library during the day and working in the shelter kitchen at night. She dreamed of college someday, maybe becoming a nurse like the mother she never knew. But without resources or support, Those dreams seemed impossibly distant. 2 weeks after finding Lily, Robert decided it was time to confront Patricia face to face. His lawyers advised against it, said to let the courts handle everything. But Robert needed to look her in the eye, needed to understand how someone could be so cruel to an innocent child. He told Lily she didn't have to come, that he could handle this alone. But Lily insisted. She stole my life, grandfather. I deserve to be there. They drove to Patricia's neighborhood on a cold Saturday morning. The mansion sat on a tree-lined street where houses cost millions and neighbors valued their privacy. Robert had paid for this house without even knowing it. Every brick bought with money meant for his granddaughter. Patricia's expensive SUV sat in the driveway, gleaming and new. Robert's car pulled up behind it, and he, Lily, James, and lawyer David Chen got out. Robert rang the doorbell. Patricia answered, and the transformation on her face was almost comical. She had clearly expected a delivery or perhaps a neighbor. Instead, she found herself staring at Robert Hamilton, the man she had been lying to for 18 years. Then she saw Lily standing beside him, no longer the discarded girl in donated clothes, but a young woman in a proper coat standing tall. The blood drained from Patricia's face. Her mouth opened and closed with no sound coming out. "Hello, Patricia," Robert said with cold courtesy. "I think we need to talk." Patricia tried to close the door, but David Chen was already pushing forward with legal authority. "Mrs. Carter, you can speak with us now, or you can speak with the police. Your choice." They ended up in Patricia's living room, a space decorated with expensive furniture and beautiful art. Everything in this room had been purchased with stolen money, and the knowledge sat between them like poison. Patricia perched on the edge of a leather sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. She kept glancing at Lily as if she couldn't quite believe the girl had found her way back. "Robert, please," Patricia started, her voice taking on a pleading tone. "Let me explain. It's not what you think." Robert slammed the folder of bank statements onto the coffee table so hard that Patricia flinched. $2 million, he said, his voice deadly quiet. 18 years of monthly deposits. Every penny I sent to make sure my granddaughter had the life she deserved. Where is it, Patricia? Where is every single penny? Patricia's face had gone from pale to an ashen gray. Her hands trembled. "I used it for Lily's benefit," she said, but the lie sounded weak even to her own ears. "Did you?" Robert leaned forward. "Because my investigators tell a different story. They tell me you bought this house, those cars outside, sent your own children to private school, took expensive vacations every summer, all while my granddaughter wore donated clothes and slept in a homeless shelter. I gave her a place to live," Patricia protested. "I fed her. I kept a roof over her head for 18 years. That cost money." Lily spoke up for the first time, her voice steady despite the emotion underneath. "You kept me in a tiny apartment. You homeschooled me so I couldn't make friends or tell anyone how you treated me. You gave me your leftover food and hand-me-down clothes. You never let me leave except for grocery shopping. And when I turned 18, you threw me out with nothing. No documents, no money, no support. You told me to figure out my own life because you had done enough." Patricia's eyes flashed with anger, the mask finally dropping completely. "You ungrateful little girl," she spat. "I took you in when no one else wanted you. I raised you when your grandfather was too busy making money to care about you." "That's a lie." Robert's voice rose with controlled fury. "I called you every month. I asked about her. You told me she was doing well, that she was happy, that she didn't want to see me because it would confuse her. And you believed me." Patricia shot back. "You never bothered to check. You never demanded to see her. You were content to throw money at the problem and ease your guilty conscience. So don't act like you're some kind of hero now." The accusation stung because it held truth. Robert had failed to verify, to insist, to do more than send checks. But that didn't excuse what Patricia had done. "You're right," Robert said quietly. "I failed Lily by not doing more. I will have to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But you deliberately stole from a child. You isolated her, neglected her, and threw her away when she was no longer useful to you. Why, Patricia? Why would you do this to an innocent child?" Something broke in Patricia's expression. Years of careful lies and justifications crumbled away, and underneath was pure, ugly resentment. Because she had everything. Patricia spat out the words like venom. Beautiful Jasmine with her perfect life. My brother loved her more than he ever loved me, his own sister. She got the education, the career, the husband who adored her. And then she died and left behind this child. And suddenly everyone cared about the baby. You sent money, lots of money, more money than I had ever seen. And I thought, why should this child have everything when my own children had so little? Why should Jasmine's daughter have advantages my children never got? So you stole from a baby, Robert said, his disgust evident. You saw a vulnerable infant and decided to use her as your meal ticket. Before Patricia could respond, David Chen made a phone call. Within 15 minutes, police arrived. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, forged documents, witness statements from neighbors who remembered the quiet girl they rarely saw. Patricia was arrested on charges of embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, and child endangerment. As officers led her out in handcuffs, her 2 teenage children came down the stairs, confused and horrified to see their mother being taken away. Robert made arrangements for those children to stay with their maternal grandmother. They were innocent in this, victims of their mother's choices. The trial happened faster than most because the evidence left no room for doubt. Neighbors testified about the isolated girl they sometimes glimpsed. Mrs. Okonkwo testified about the state Lily was in when she arrived at the shelter, malnourished, traumatized, with no resources. And Lily herself testified. She sat in that courtroom and told her story with quiet dignity. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Patricia to 12 years in federal prison and ordered full repayment of $2 million plus interest and damages. Her assets were seized: the house, the cars, everything purchased with stolen money. The recovered funds were placed in a new trust for Lily, this time properly protected with oversight and safeguards. 6 months passed like a dream. Lily enrolled at UCLA, studying social work with a focus on helping youth aging out of foster care. She wanted to help others who had faced similar struggles, to be the advocate she never had. She lived with Robert, and they slowly built the relationship they should have had all along. Robert taught her about business, about their family history, about the strong line of ancestors who had overcome obstacles to build better lives. Lily discovered she had distant relatives who welcomed her with open arms: cousins, aunts, uncles, a whole family tree she never knew existed. She learned about her mother through stories and videos, through photo albums and saved letters. Jasmine became real to her in a way that single photograph never could. And Robert learned about Lily, her intelligence, her compassion, her surprising sense of humor. She loved old movies and spicy food and had a talent for drawing. She was studying hard but also learning to relax, to trust that she didn't have to earn every meal or prove her worth. One Saturday morning, Lily asked Robert to drive her somewhere. She directed him back to the east side, to Hope Haven Shelter. Mrs. Okonkwo greeted them with huge smiles and tight hugs. Lily had been volunteering there every weekend, helping other young women navigate resources and opportunities. But today was special. Lily had worked with Robert to establish a scholarship fund for shelter residents who wanted to pursue education. The Jasmine Hamilton Second Chance Scholarship would cover tuition, books, housing, and support services for young women experiencing homelessness or aging out of foster care. The first 3 recipients stood nervously in Mrs. Okonkwo's office as Lily presented them with award letters. Robert watched his granddaughter comfort these young women, share her story, and offer hope. This was who Jasmine would have been, someone who took her pain and transformed it into purpose. After the presentation, Robert and Lily drove to the cemetery where Jasmine was buried. They stood before her grave, a simple but elegant headstone that Robert had visited countless times over the years. "I found her, sweetheart," Robert said softly, placing fresh flowers on the grave. "Our Lily. She's everything you would have wanted her to be. Strong, kind, brilliant. She survived things no child should face, and she came through it with grace." Lily placed her own flowers next to Robert's. She pulled out a photo, the first one of her and Robert together, taken at her university orientation. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "I finally got to meet Grandfather. I finally got to come home. I wish you were here, but I feel you with me. I promise to make you proud." That evening, back at the penthouse, Robert brought Lily tea the way she liked it. He kissed the top of her head the way his own father used to do, the way he should have been doing for 18 years. "Don't stay up too late," he said. "You have that study group in the morning." "I won't," Lily promised, smiling up at him. "Good night, Grandfather." "Good night, sweetheart." Robert walked to his room, his heart fuller than it had been in decades. He had lost so much time, made so many mistakes. But he had been given something precious, a second chance. A chance to be the grandfather he should have been from the start. The scholarship fund grew. More young women received second chances. More lives were changed. And in a penthouse high above the city, a grandfather and granddaughter built the relationship they had been denied, one conversation and shared meal at a time. If this story touched your heart, remember this: your worth isn't determined by who failed you. It's determined by how you rise after the fall. Sometimes the family that's supposed to protect you becomes your greatest enemy. But sometimes, when you least expect it, family finds you again. And that's when healing truly begins. Thanks for listening to this story. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to make things right.